Rain hammered against the windows of the lighthouse, a dive bar on the wrong side of the harbor, where sailors drank away their paychecks and lonely souls found temporary warmth in whiskey and dim lighting. It was 2:47 a.m., and Dean Sawyer was doing what he did every night, wiping down the scarred wooden bar, stacking chairs, counting the till with the kind of practiced efficiency that came from 5 years of the same routine. He'd sent home his last customer, old Jack, who came in every Tuesday and Thursday to drink exactly 3 beers and talk about the wife he'd lost 20 minutes ago. Now the bar was silent except for the rain and the soft jazz playing from the ancient jukebox in the corner. Dean was reaching for the light switch when he heard it, a sound, soft, almost imperceptible beneath the storm, coming from the storage room. His hand went to the baseball bat he kept behind the bar. Neighborhood wasn't great, and he'd had break-ins before. He moved quietly, years of bartending having taught him how to walk without making a sound, and pushed open the storage room door. At first he saw nothing, just boxes of liquor, cleaning supplies, the ancient beer cooler that only worked half the time. Then he saw her. She was wedged behind a stack of boxes in the far corner, curled into herself, trying to make her body as small as possible. Even in the dim light from the hallway, Dean could see the bruises, dark purple blooming across her cheekbone, her split lip, the way she held her ribs like they hurt. Her clothes were expensive, designer, even Dean could tell that much, but torn and dirty. Her dark hair hung in tangled waves around a face that was beautiful despite the damage, and her eyes, when they met his, were the color of amber and absolutely terrified. "Please," she whispered, and her voice was hoarse, broken. "Please don't call anyone." Dean lowered the bat slowly, held up his other hand in what he hoped was a non-threatening gesture. "Are you hurt? Do you need a doctor?" "No doctors, no police, no one." She pressed herself further into the corner, and he could see her whole body trembling. "Please, if they find me, they'll take me back, and I can't go back." Every instinct Dean had was screaming at him to call someone. This woman was clearly in trouble, clearly injured, clearly running from something or someone dangerous. The smart thing, the safe thing, would be to dial 911, let the professionals handle it, wash his hands of whatever mess this was. But something in her eyes stopped him, something desperate and real and human that cut through all his careful cynicism. "Okay," he heard himself say. "Okay, no doctors, no police, but you can't stay in the storage room. There's an apartment upstairs, small, nothing fancy, but it's dry and warm. Let me help you up there." She stared at him like he'd offered her the moon. "Why would you help me? You don't even know me." "No," Dean agreed, "but I know what it looks like when someone's running for their life, and I know I can't leave you hiding in a storage room." He extended his hand. After a long moment, she took it. Getting her upstairs was harder than Dean had anticipated. She could barely walk, favoring her left side, wincing with every step. Whatever had happened to her, it had been bad. By the time they reached his apartment, really just 2 rooms and a bathroom above the bar, she was shaking so hard her teeth were chattering. The apartment was as bare bones as Dean had warned. A couch that had seen better days, a kitchenette with exactly 3 plates and 2 mugs, a bedroom barely big enough for the double bed it contained. But it was clean, and it was safe, and right now that seemed to be all she needed. He settled her on the couch, grabbed the first aid kit he kept under the sink, another necessity of living in this neighborhood, and knelt in front of her. "I need to check your injuries," he said gently. "Is that okay?" She nodded but didn't speak. Dean worked with careful efficiency, cleaning the cut on her lip, examining the bruises, checking her ribs with gentle fingers that had her hissing in pain. "I don't think anything's broken," he said finally, "but you're going to be sore for a while. These bruises are a few days old. Where have you been hiding?" "Nowhere good." She looked at him properly for the first time, seemed to really see him. "What's your name?" "Dean. Dean Sawyer." "Thank you, Dean Sawyer." Her voice cracked. "I'm—" She stopped, seemed to wrestle with something. "I'm Alara." Just Alara. No last name, and Dean knew better than to push. "Nice to meet you, Alara." He stood, moved to the kitchen. "You hungry? I've got ramen and beer, basically." Bachelor cuisine. Despite everything, she almost smiled. Ramen sounds perfect. While the water boiled, Dean watched her from the corner of his eye. Now that she was in better light, now that the immediate panic had passed, he could see her more clearly. She was probably late 20s, around his age, with fine features and the kind of bone structure that spoke of good genetics and better breeding. Her hands, despite the dirt and scratches, showed no signs of manual labor. Her accent when she spoke was cultured, educated. She was running from money, Dean realized, from privilege, from a world he'd never understand. "You can stay here as long as you need," he said, bringing her the ramen. "The bar's closed Mondays, so you'll have the place to yourself during the day. Just try not to be visible from the windows, okay? And if anyone comes asking questions, tell them you haven't seen anyone." "I know." She took the bowl with hands that were still shaking. "I've been running for 6 days. I know how this works." "Who are you running from?" She was quiet for so long, Dean thought she wouldn't answer. Then quietly, "My family, the people who are supposed to love me." And in those words, Dean heard a story he recognized. Not the specifics, maybe, but the shape of it. He'd grown up with an old man who'd drunk himself to death and a mother who'd left when he was 10. He knew what it meant when family became the thing you ran from instead of toward. "You're safe here," he said. "I promise." Alara looked at him with those amber eyes, and something passed between them. Understanding, maybe. Recognition that they were both people the world had tried to break, still standing despite everything. "Why are you helping me?" she asked again. Dean shrugged. "Because someone should. Because you asked. Because—" He stopped. Tried to find words for something he didn't quite understand himself. "Because you looked like you needed saving, and I'm tired of watching people drown." She set down the ramen, and then, unexpectedly, she started to cry. Not loud, dramatic tears, but quiet ones that seemed to come from somewhere deep and exhausted, and finally safe enough to break. Dean did the only thing he could think of. He sat beside her on the couch and let her cry into his shoulder, one hand awkwardly patting her back, feeling completely out of his depth, but somehow exactly where he needed to be. "Thank you," she whispered when the tears finally stopped. "Thank you for being kind." "Any time," Dean said, and meant it. The first 3 days established a rhythm. Dean would close the bar around 3 a.m., come upstairs to find Alara curled on the couch reading one of his handful of books or staring out the window at the harbor lights. They'd talk, carefully at first, both of them dancing around the big questions, the dangerous truths. He'd tell her about the bar, about the regulars, about old Jack and his stories of his dead wife. She'd tell him small things about herself, how she liked classical music, how she'd always wanted to learn to paint, how she'd never been allowed to just be ordinary. During the day while Dean slept, Alara would clean the apartment with a kind of desperate energy, like she needed to be useful, needed to earn her keep. She'd organize his pathetic excuse for a kitchen, fold the laundry he'd been ignoring for weeks, leave little notes thanking him for things that didn't need thanks. "Thank you for the coffee. Thank you for not asking questions. Thank you for letting me stay." And slowly, gradually, the bruises began to fade. The fear in her eyes began to recede. She started to look less like a hunted animal and more like a person. On the fourth night, Dean came upstairs to find her wearing one of his old t-shirts. She'd had nothing but the torn designer clothes she'd arrived in, and cooking something that actually smelled good. "I found pasta," she said, not turning from the stove, "and some tomatoes that were about to turn. Hope you don't mind." "Mind? I'm impressed you found anything edible in that kitchen." Dean dropped onto the couch, pulled off his shoes. "Rough night. Guy tried to start a fight over the jukebox. Had to physically remove him. Are you okay?" "I'm fine. Comes with the territory." He watched her move around his kitchen with surprising confidence. "You know how to cook." "I had to learn. The staff at—" She stopped abruptly. "I mean, I took some classes. Cooking classes." The staff. Dean filed that away with all the other small clues he'd been gathering. The way she held herself, like she'd had years of posture training. The way she knew which fork to use when they ate. The way she sometimes forgot to hide her educated accent. Alara wasn't just running from money. She was running from serious money. the kind that had staff and estates and probably security teams looking for her. "Ilara," he said carefully, "I need to know what I'm dealing with. If people come looking for you, dangerous people, I need to be prepared." She set down the wooden spoon, turned to face him. In the dim kitchen light, she looked both younger and older than her years, fragile and steel all at once. "My name isn't really Ilara," she said. "It's Ilara Ashford." The name hit Dean like a punch to the gut. Ashford, as in the Ashford family, as in the shipping magnates who owned half the harbor, who had their name on buildings and charity foundations and society pages, as in the daughter who disappeared 3 weeks ago, whose face had been all over the news for exactly 2 days before the story mysteriously died. The daughter everyone assumed was dead. "Jesus," Dean breathed. "You're supposed to be dead." "I know." She wrapped her arms around herself. "That's what they want people to think. Easier than explaining why the family's perfect daughter ran away 2 days before her engagement party." Engagement. To Marcus Holloway. Old money. Appropriate family connections. Father's business partner's son. Her voice was bitter. "I'd met him 3 times before they announced we were engaged. He was not kind, Dean, not gentle. And when I tried to say no, when I tried to tell them I didn't want to marry a stranger, they made it clear I didn't have a choice. So you ran." "So I ran. Got 3 blocks before Marcus's security team found me. They brought me back. And my father—" She touched her cheekbone where the bruise had been. "My father made sure I understood the consequences of embarrassing the family." Dean felt rage build in his chest, hot and righteous and dangerous. "He hit you. He did worse than that. He locked me in my room, told me I'd stay there until the wedding. No phone, no internet, guards outside my door." She smiled without humor. "But he forgot that I grew up in that house. I knew every secret passage, every hidden exit. So I waited until night and I ran again. And this time, I didn't stop running until I found your bar. And your family thinks you're dead because I made sure they would. Left my coat on the pier, my shoes by the water, my phone floating in the harbor, made it look like I jumped." She met his eyes. "I'd rather be dead to them than go back to that life." Dean processed this, processed the enormity of what she'd done, what she was risking, what he was now part of. "They'll be looking for you," he said. "If they suspect you're alive, they won't. The funeral was yesterday. I read about it online." Her voice cracked. "My own funeral, and I couldn't even attend. My mother cried. My father gave a beautiful eulogy about his beloved daughter, and then they went back to their lives like I never existed. Ilara, I know it was selfish. I know I hurt people. But Dean, I couldn't marry him. I couldn't spend the rest of my life as a decoration, a possession, a thing to be traded between powerful men." She moved toward him, and he could see tears in her eyes. "I'd rather be nobody, living in a tiny apartment above a dive bar, than be the person they wanted me to be." Dean stood, crossed to her, did something he'd been wanting to do for days. He pulled her into his arms, held her while she cried, felt her shake against him. "You're not nobody," he said into her hair. "You're Ilara. You're brave and strong, and you're here. That's not nothing." She pulled back, looked up at him, and for a moment the air between them changed, became charged with something neither of them was quite ready to name. Then the moment passed, and she stepped back, wiping her eyes. "Your pasta's burning," she said. Dean turned to see smoke rising from the pan. Shit. They salvaged what they could, ate burned pasta at his tiny table, and talked until the sun came up. And if Dean's hand found hers across the table, if their fingers intertwined and neither of them pulled away, well, that was nobody's business but theirs. Join our inner circle of story lovers. Subscribe to get early access and exclusives. You're the reason we create. The fifth night, everything changed. Dean was closing the bar when a man walked in. Expensive suit, cold eyes, the kind of face that said he'd seen violence and probably caused most of it. "We're closed," Dean said, not moving from behind the bar. "I'm looking for someone." The man pulled out a photo, slid it across the bar. Woman, late 20s, dark hair, amber eyes, goes by the name Ilara. Dean's blood ran cold. The photo was of her, or someone who looked very much like her, but in the picture she was polished, perfect, wearing diamonds and a formal gown. Nothing like the woman currently hiding upstairs in his t-shirt. Haven't seen her, Dean said, meeting the man's eyes steadily. But if she's stupid enough to come into this neighborhood, she probably got herself killed. Interesting. The man smiled and it didn't reach his eyes. Because I have it on good authority that a woman matching her description was seen entering this establishment 6 days ago and hasn't been seen leaving. Then your authority is mistaken. Is it? The man leaned forward and Dean could see a gun holster beneath his jacket. Mr. Sawyer, yes, I know your name. I'm prepared to offer you a substantial reward for information leading to Miss Ashford's recovery. $25,000 cash. No questions asked. 25,000. That was 6 months of revenue for the bar. That was fixing the roof that leaked every winter. That was security for the first time in his adult life. Not interested, Dean said. 50,000. Still not interested. The man's smile faded. You're making a mistake. The Ashford family wants their daughter back. If you're hiding her, if you know where she is, you're putting yourself in considerable danger. Thanks for the concern. But like I said, haven't seen her. Now get out of my bar. For a long moment, the man just stared at him. Then slowly, he stood. You've been warned, Mr. Sawyer. When they find her, and they will find her, anyone who helped her will pay the price. He left and Dean locked the door behind him with shaking hands. Upstairs, Alara was waiting. I heard, she said quietly. Dean, you should have taken the money. You should have. Don't. Dean crossed to her, took her hands in his. Don't finish that sentence. I'm not turning you in. Not for 50,000, not for 50 million. But no buts. You asked me not to call anyone, and I gave you my word. He squeezed her hands gently. But Alara, he's right about one thing. If they're sending people here, if they know to look at this bar, then someone saw you come in. Someone talked. Alara's face went pale. Oh God, Dean, if they find me here, they'll hurt you. Then we make sure they don't find you. Simple as that. But it wasn't simple. Over the next 2 days, more people came sniffing around. Not all of them obvious like the first man. Some were subtle, asking casual questions, ordering drinks, watching. Dean could feel the walls closing in. On the third night, he came upstairs to find Alara packing the few belongings she'd accumulated. What are you doing? He asked. Leaving? I can't stay here, Dean. I can't put you in danger like this. Where will you go? I don't know. Somewhere else. Anywhere else. She wouldn't meet his eyes. I should never have stayed this long. Should never have let myself. She stopped, swallowed hard. You've been kind. Kinder than I deserved. But I have to go. Dean crossed the room in 3 strides, took the bag from her hand, set it on the floor. No, he said simply. Dean. I said no, Alara. You're not leaving. Not like this. Not running scared into the night where God knows what could happen to you. But they'll hurt you. They can try. He cupped her face in his hands, made her look at him. Listen to me. I spent 5 years building this bar, building this life, building walls so high nothing could touch me. I was safe. I was alone. I was surviving but not living. And then you showed up, bruised and terrified, and suddenly I remembered what it felt like to care about something other than making it to the next day. Dean, her voice was breaking. I'm not letting you go, Alara. Not because I'm trying to be heroic, not because I want a reward, but because, he stopped, tried to find the courage for the truth. Because somewhere in the last week, you stopped being a stranger I was helping and started being the most important person in my world. You barely know me. I know enough. I know you're brave. I know you're kind. I know you clean my apartment when you don't have to and leave me notes thanking me for things I should be thanking you for. I know you make terrible coffee and great pasta, and you cry during sad songs on the jukebox. He brushed a tear from her cheek with his thumb. I know I'd rather face your entire family and their security team than spend 1 day without you. Alara stared at him, amber eyes wide and wet. Then she kissed him. It was desperate and sweet and tasted like salt from her tears and hope from his lips. Dean pulled her closer, one hand in her hair, the other at her waist, and kissed her back like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Alara whispered, "I think I'm falling in love with you, Dean Sawyer." "Good," Dean said, "because I fell in love with you about 5 days ago." They kissed again, softer this time, tender. And when he picked her up and carried her to his bedroom, when they fell into his bed together, when they made love with gentle hands and whispered promises, it felt like coming home. The plan came to Dean 3 days later, while he was serving drinks and pretending everything was normal. If Ilara's family thought she was dead, if the funeral had already happened, then she was free, or she should be. The only problem was the people looking for her, the bounty hunters, the security teams, whoever else the Ashford family had hired. But what if they had a reason to stop looking? "I have an idea," he told Ilara that night. "It's crazy, probably dangerous, but it might work. Tell me, your family thinks you're dead, right? And they want you to stay dead because otherwise they have to explain why their daughter faked her own suicide to escape a forced marriage. It's embarrassing. Bad for the family image." "Right. So we give them proof. Real proof that you're gone. A body." Ilara went pale. "Dean, not a real body. A Jane Doe from the morgue. I know a guy, used to be a regular before he got sober, who works there. We get him to fake some records. Say they found remains that match your DNA profile. Your family gets closure, the search teams get called off, and you get to actually be free. That's fraud. That's illegal." "So is faking your own death." Dean took her hands. "Ilara, I know it's not perfect, but it's the only way I can think of to make them stop looking, to make you safe." She was quiet for a long time. Then, "Okay, let's do it." It took another week to set everything in motion. Dean's friend Tommy came through, faking the paperwork, creating a trail that said remains had washed up 3 weeks after Ilara's disappearance. The DNA evidence was conclusive. The case was closed. Dean watched the news coverage with Ilara curled against his side. Watched the Ashford family's second memorial service. The tears, the grief. Watched Marcus Holloway stand at the grave, looking appropriately devastated. "Do you feel guilty?" Dean asked quietly. "For hurting them?" "A little. For the staff who actually cared about me, yes. But for my father, for Marcus, for the life they wanted to force me into?" She shook her head. "No, I don't feel guilty for surviving." The search teams were called off the next day. The bounty hunters moved on to other jobs. And slowly, carefully, Ilara started to build a life. She got a job at the library 3 blocks away, under a fake name, with fake references Tommy helped create. She started painting, buying cheap supplies from the art store, and filling Dean's apartment with canvases of the harbor, the bar, the life she was learning to love. She became part of the fabric of the neighborhood, the pretty woman who lived above the lighthouse, who helped old Jack remember his wife's favorite songs, who laughed at Dean's terrible jokes and made the lonely bar feel like home, and Dean fell deeper in love with her every day. They'd been together 3 months when the first cracks appeared. It started with a regular, Mickey, who'd been coming to the lighthouse for 2 years, asking too many questions. "Your girl," Mickey said one night, drunk and loose-lipped. "She looks familiar, like I've seen her somewhere before." "Lots of people look familiar when you're drunk, Mickey," Dean said, keeping his voice light. "No, I mean it. She looks like that dead heiress, the Ashford girl." Dean's blood ran cold. "Mickey, you're wasted. Go home and sleep it off." But Mickey kept talking, kept speculating, and Dean could see other regulars starting to listen, starting to look at Ilara with new eyes. The next night, Mickey didn't show up, or the night after that. On the third night, Dean found out why. A man walked into the bar, different from the first one, but with the same cold eyes, the same predatory energy. "Dean Sawyer," he said, "we need to talk about the woman you're hiding." "I'm not hiding anyone." "Really? Because Mickey O'Brien gave us some very interesting information before he disappeared." Dean's fist clenched around the glass he was holding. "What did you do to Mickey?" "Nothing permanent. Just reminded him that talking to the wrong people has consequences." The man smiled. "Now, where is Ilara Ashford?" "She's dead. Your bosses had a funeral and everything. Funny thing about that, we had the DNA evidence examined by an independent lab. Turns out it was doctored. Sloppy work, really. He leaned forward. So I'll ask again. Where is she? Upstairs, Dean knew. Alara was probably listening. Probably terrified. Probably planning to run again. Don't know what you're talking about, Dean said. Wrong answer. The man pulled out a gun, laid it casually on the bar. Last chance. Tell me where she is, or I start hurting people until you do. Starting with that nice old man who comes in on Tuesdays and Thursdays. You touch Jack and You'll what? You're a bartender, Sawyer. You're nobody. And Miss Ashford needs to come home. Her family misses her. Her fiancé misses her. Her fiancé beat her. Her family locked her in a room. That's family business, not yours. The man picked up the gun, checked the chamber. So here's how this is going to work. You're going to tell me where she is. I'm going to take her home, and you're going to forget this ever happened. Or, he pointed the gun at Dean's chest, I can make sure you're the one who needs a funeral. Dean was calculating his chances. Could he reach the bat under the bar? Could he tackle the man before he got a shot off? When the lights went out, everything plunged into darkness. Someone screamed. Glass shattered. And then, chaos. Dean dove behind the bar as gunshots rang out. 1, 2, 3. Wood splintered where his head had just been. He grabbed the bat, stayed low, tried to figure out what the hell was happening. Then he heard her voice shouting from across the bar. Everyone out! Now! Fire! And there was fire, sudden, bright, spreading fast across the floor. Someone had dumped alcohol and lit it, creating a wall of flame between the gunman and the door. The few customers who'd been in the bar scrambled for the exit. The gunman was cursing, trying to aim through the smoke and flames, and Alara, Alara, was behind the jukebox, lighter still in her hand, looking at Dean with fierce determination. Go! She shouted. I'll hold him off! Like hell! Dean launched himself over the bar, tackled the gunman before he could turn the gun on Alara. They went down hard, struggling for the weapon. Dean felt it go off once, twice, bullets punching through the ceiling. Then his fist connected with the man's jaw, and the gun clattered away. Dean scrambled for it, got his hands on it just as the gunman lunged. They grappled, rolling through broken glass, through spilled alcohol, through the spreading flames. Then Alara was there, the baseball bat in her hands, and she swung it hard into the gunman's skull. He went down like a sack of stones. We have to go, Alara said, already pulling Dean toward the door. Now, before backup arrives. They ran, out the back exit, into the alley, through the maze of streets Dean knew by heart. Behind them, sirens wailed. Fire trucks, police, the whole neighborhood responding to the blaze. Dean's bar, his life's work, was burning, and he'd done nothing to stop it. But Alara was alive, and right now that was all that mattered. They ran until they couldn't run anymore, until they collapsed in an alley 3 miles away. Both breathing hard, both covered in soot and blood that wasn't theirs. I'm sorry, Alara gasped. I'm sorry about the bar, about Mickey, about all of it. This is my fault. No. Dean pulled her close, held her tight. This is your family's fault, your fiancé's fault, not yours. But, no buts. You saved my life back there. You burned your own escape route to give people time to get out. He pulled back, looked at her properly. You're the bravest person I've ever met, Alara Ashford. She laughed, watery but real. I just burned down your bar. It's insured, mostly. He kissed her forehead. We'll figure it out. Together. Together, she agreed. They went to ground after that. Dean had some money saved. Not much, but enough for a cheap motel on the outskirts of the city. They stayed there for 2 weeks, watching the news, waiting to see what would happen. The fire was ruled accidental. Faulty wiring, the same thing that had supposedly killed Thomas. The gunman, when questioned by police, claimed he'd just been a customer in the wrong place at the wrong time. Mickey O'Brien turned up 3 days later, refusing to talk about where he'd been. And the Ashford family released a statement expressing their sadness at the tragedy that had befallen a beloved neighborhood establishment. No mention of Alara, no mention of the search. Nothing. They're letting it go, Dean said, watching the news with growing hope. Your family is actually letting it go. For now, Alara was less optimistic. But Dean, they won't stop. Not really. They'll just wait, watch, try again when we're not expecting it. Then what do we do? She was quiet for a long time. Then, we go public. All of it. The forced engagement, the abuse, the fakery. We go to the media, tell them everything, and dare my family to deny it. That's dangerous. Everything about this is dangerous. She took his hand. But I'm tired of running, tired of hiding. I want my life back. The life I choose, not the one they tried to force on me. And I want you in it. Dean kissed her, slow and deep and full of promise. Then let's do it. Let's burn their whole world down. The press conference happened 3 days later. Alara stood in front of a dozen cameras, Dean beside her, and told her story. All of it. The forced engagement, the abuse, the faked death. She showed the medical records from the hospital she'd secretly visited after escaping. She showed the photos of her bruises, the evidence of what her family had done. And she named names: Marcus Holloway, Richard Ashford, every person who'd been complicit in trying to control her life. The story exploded. Within hours, it was national news. The Ashford family's carefully constructed image shattered. Marcus Holloway was arrested on assault charges. Richard Ashford faced questions about his business dealings, his methods, his treatment of his daughter. And Alara finally got to reclaim her life. 6 months later, Dean stood in front of a new bar. Not the lighthouse, but something smaller, quieter, in a better neighborhood. The insurance money from the fire, combined with a substantial settlement from the Ashford family, paid to avoid further scandal, had been enough to start over. The new place was called Alara's, named for the woman who'd saved his life in more ways than one. She appeared beside him now, paint still in her hair from the studio she'd set up in the apartment above the bar. Her apartment, officially. Their apartment, in truth. "Ready for opening night?" she asked. "Ready." Dean pulled her close, kissed her temple. "Though I'm still not sure why you wanted to be partners in a bar. You could have done anything with that settlement money." "I could have," Alara agreed. "But this," she gestured to the bar, to him, to the life they'd built together. "This is what I want. A place where people can come to feel safe, to be seen, to be ordinary. The things I never had." "You're not ordinary, Alara Ashford." "Good thing I'm not Alara Ashford anymore." She held up her hand, showed him the simple gold band on her finger, matching the one on his. "I'm Alara Sawyer now, ordinary bartender's wife, aspiring artist, woman who chose her own life." Dean kissed her properly then, ignoring the catcalls from the construction workers still finishing the last details inside. "I love you," he said against her lips. "I love you too." She pulled back, grinned. "Now come on, husband. We have a bar to open." They walked inside together, hand in hand, ready to start the next chapter. Ready to build something beautiful from the ashes of everything they'd lost. And if Dean looked back one more time, if he sent a silent thank you to that rainy night when a bruised, exhausted woman had hidden in his storage room and changed his life forever, well, that was between him and the universe. Some things were worth burning down your whole life for. Love was one of them. Love this story? Smash that like button and subscribe for more.